Welcome. My name is Ken Cyree, and I am privileged to be the Dean in the School of Business Administration. It's been wonderful for me to get to know a lot of the MBA students and to be involved with the MBA program. I want to make a couple of very quick introductions just for a second. First off, our MBA Board President, Liz Randall, is right down here to my right, and you'll be hearing from her. Instrumental to our program is our MBA Director, Doug Voorhees. I know I saw Doug somewhere. He's over there. And the workhorse in the program, of course, is, as all of you students know for sure, is Bethany Cooper, who does a great job for us, too. So please welcome Bethany. A brief word about our sponsors. We appreciate these folks sponsoring our event today, Bancorp South, BoardGPS.com, Consolidated Graphics, FedEx, FNC Inc., Randall Commercial Group, and Viking Range. I now want to introduce our first speaker to welcome you to the university. He is the 16th Chancellor of the University of Mississippi. He is a medical doctor. In fact, he was the head of the American Heart Association and was, before he became Chancellor, was voted as one of America's best doctors. He's an accomplished golfer. A great story about Dr. Jones. We had, in fact, I know. No, we had a tennis player come and he said, he looked at my golf ball collection. He said, "I like your golf ball collection, but the Chancellor has a putting green in his backyard." So that tells you where we stand. But please welcome Chancellor Dan Jones.
Thank you, Ken, and good morning, everybody, and welcome to Ole Miss. Welcome to a typical weekend at the University of Mississippi. This is anything but a typical time. We are grateful to have you here this weekend on this time that is an exciting weekend for us. I want to say to those of you who are here in support of our MBA program, profound thanks. One of the things that is a distinguishing characteristic of our university is the way we build relationships. Not everybody understands that. But if you hang around this place for a while and you hear people talk about the mystique of Ole Miss, you know, the trees are great, the classical architecture is great, the rolling hills, the best shrubbery in the world is pretty to look at, right? All of that is great stuff. But when we get down to what is special about Ole Miss, it's people, and it's relationships that we build. And the way this program is put together and the MBA program, facilitating helping people build relationships is what Ole Miss is about. And so this couldn't happen. This couldn't happen unless people were willing to do it, unless students were willing to engage in relationships with faculty and with mentors, those in the business community. And it wouldn't happen unless we had a remarkable faculty who remained committed, even as we grow in unprecedented ways here, to remain committed to relationships with students. And then for those of you who come and stay engaged with our students from the real world, for you to take time. I know a bunch of you folks, and I know that your time is worth something, and for you to give a day like today and other time that you give to the MBA program, it's not just an ordinary thing, it's what makes Ole Miss what Ole Miss is, and so we thank you for that. These are remarkable days in lots of ways. I believe Monday we'll finally see enrollment data publicly revealed. Some of our universities who dealt with the storm have had a little trouble getting their data together, I think, and it's being out a little bit later than usual. I'm not able to give you numbers this morning. I'll just tell you that when the data is out, we'll still be the largest university in the state and by more than we used to be, and I'll be really happy about that. We're going to continue to make progress on growth here. This year, for the first time, we decided to cap the size of the freshman class. We've had very rapid growth in the 6 to to 9% range a year for the last few years, and we decided we didn't want to risk people losing the Ole Miss experience, and so we made a painful decision to put a limit on the number of students in the freshman class and have a freshman class this year just under 3,400, which is almost as large as last year's class of 3,600, but it's a smarter class. We're glad about that. We raised the bar a little bit. We're making progress on, while providing access to Mississippi students for our non-resident students who choose to come here, being able to select from the best to come to move Ole Miss forward, and we're not unhappy about that opportunity. This is a special year in another way as well. We're celebrating and commemorating 50 years of racial integration at the University of Mississippi. 50 years ago, October 1st, courageous American James Meredith offered himself for admission here, and he changed not only this university, he changed the world with his courage. And we're all grateful to Mr. Meredith. If you look closely in my box this weekend, I hope you'll see him sitting with me at the watching a good football game. It's been a joy to get to know him better over these last days as we prepared for the 50th anniversary. A number of things that we'll do over a period of a year and a half or so to commemorate this time, including some keynote speakers. U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder will be here the last part of September, and then on October the 1st, the day of our anniversary, civil rights icon and entertainer Harry Belafonte will be keynote speaker here. Will be a good time at Ole Miss. We'll continue to have things throughout this academic year, and I encourage you to pay attention to our website and to participate in those things as we look back and with regret at the injustice of the past, but in a happy way, recommit ourselves to open doors for opportunity for the future, and to acknowledge that we still live in an imperfect world and that we're all going to continue to work to make the world a better place. So thank you for coming and being here this weekend. I'm jealous of you. I'm afraid I have a few things to do today, and so I'm not able to sit and listen to your wonderful speakers. Peter, thank you for coming. It's great to have you here. Sam, all of these speakers, I wish I could stay around and hear all of you guys. This would probably help me understand how to keep our university moving forward in an era where public funding for higher education continues to go down every year. So I wish you well in this conference. Thank you for what you do. God bless you, and let's beat Texas.
First of all, on behalf of the MBA program, we thank you all for being here. We're very excited. We've got some excellent speakers. We're going to be talking today a lot about leadership. And I want to first start by talking about our internal leadership. And that starts with our Chancellor, who's very committed to this MBA program. It goes to our Dean, who is a tremendous leader, not just for the MBA program, but for the business school and for the whole. Bethany Cooper, who is our Corporate Relations Director, has worked very hard for this program and to get this programming going today, and also for Doug Voorhees, who's the director of our program. This is a very exciting time for the program. We have excellent numbers. Every year our numbers get better and better. Our students come in more prepared, and they leave better prepared, and that's the overall goal. So with that, I'd like to first introduce our first keynote speaker. It's an amazing honor to introduce Peter Costa. If you see him, you all know him. All of us who are CNBC junkies know his face for sure. He's always in the closing bell with Maria Bartiromo. But to give a little background on him, he's currently a governor for the New York Stock Exchange. So if he wasn't here with us, he'd be running around making a market in New York City. He's the current president and co-founder of Empire Executions, which is a boutique trading firm for the NYSE. He regularly appears on the closing bell with Maria Bartiromo for CNBC, out front with Aaron Burnett and the Larry Kudlow Show. He started his career as a clerk 30 years ago on the floor of the exchange, and has worked with some of the biggest names on Wall Street. He is certainly no stranger to the SEC. He is a University of Tennessee fan. He told me he's got this fantastic personality and this fantastic accent, and he told me, he goes, Liz, I'm not going to come down there in this bright orange, only because they'll think I'm a Texas fan. So we got him some red and blue clothes, and I asked him to Google the hottie toddy, so he did that and came down here and prepared and knew what we were all about. So Peter, is a tremendous honor. I want to welcome you to the stage and introduce Mr. Peter Costa.
All right. Well, I have a speech prepared, but it doesn't mean I'm going to follow it. I'd like to thank everyone for coming, and I'd like to thank everyone for at Ole Miss making me feel so welcome. I've heard of Southern hospitality. I went to school at Tennessee, which we'll get into in a few minutes, and I knew a lot about Southern hospitality, but I've never felt anything like I've felt here in Oxford. So I want to thank everyone, and you guys really have just made yourselves proud. It's amazing. All right, so now I have a little bit of a speech here, but I don't know if I'm going to follow it because that's typical of me. I was one of those type of students at UT that basically didn't follow what the rules were. And thankfully, I dated the chief of police's daughter. So that kind of helped me get through 5 tumultuous years at UT's forestry school. All right, let me see where I want to start. Now, I know that this is there's a lot of very distinguished people here, and I feel kind of humbled to be on the same panel with these people. So I hope I don't embarrass myself, and I hope I give you a little bit of an entertaining speech and give you a little background about myself. All right, as you know, I went to the University of Tennessee. I spent 5 years there. Don't ask why. It took me longer than most people to graduate with a degree in forestry. I enjoyed those 5 years, and it was a weird situation because I had applied to 7 different schools before I went to UT, and I got turned down from all of them. And then I finally got accepted at UT. It was the first school that accepted me after I figured out what had happened. Apparently, my transcripts were the wrong ones, and every school had seen that I had taken shop and all these different home economics classes. And obviously, they had the wrong transcript, and when I reapplied to all the schools, I got accepted. UT was the first one. My brother lived there, so I went down there, and I loved it. I loved the South. I loved Knoxville. And I really had a great time. And I chose forestry because prior to going to UT, I was a hippie. And I spent a lot of time camping and fishing and hiking, so I figured what better place to go than go to a forestry school. So that's where I ended up. And I cut my hair, and I never studied. But I still graduated, and as I got out of school in 1981, I was fortunate enough to graduate in a time when the lumber business and the housing industry were at a bottom. So forestry graduates are not getting hired. I couldn't get a job anywhere. So I ended up working at my sister's laundromat, and was making $300 a week. And that's a story we'll try to save for another time, maybe at the Grove tomorrow afternoon. I can actually tell you what really happened, but we'll just go from there. So a lot of my friends worked on Wall Street, and I had a business minor, and I said, you know what, let me see if I can get a job on Wall Street. Now, at the time, it was the beginning of a very big upcycle in Wall Street, and they were hiring everybody, and apparently they were definitely hiring everybody. They hired me. So I ended up getting a job working on the trading floor, and I got hired the day President Reagan got shot. It was March 30th or March 31st, 1981, and the guy that hired me was a 4'9" fidget who used to smoke cigarettes on the trading floor, and he was the meanest human being you would ever meet. People feared him. He was like 73 years old, had been down on the trading floor since 1929, and he knew everything. I mean, he knew where all the bodies laid. He knew everything, and he trained me. So now I learned from a guy who was a character. And I think I worked well with him because I'm sort of a character. So we hit it off pretty well, and he retired, and I ended up taking over his role. And after that, I got hired by Lehman Brothers. Now, this is important because if you look at my bio, you'll see that 2 of the 3 major firms I worked for went bankrupt. Has nothing to do with me. It's just a matter of timing. But I worked for Lehman Brothers prior to its takeover from Shearson, and it was a really great experience. I learned the whole institutional game. From trading on the trading floor to the investment banking side, and the firm allowed us to go in any direction we wanted to go. I wanted to stay on the trading floor because literally at that time, it was the coolest place in the world to work. And I mean, I knew that I could make money down there, and I knew that I had a defined skill set that would be successful in that arena. And I worked for Lehman for 4 years, and then Lehman got taken over by Shearson. I left there, and I went to work for a small boutique firm, which actually turned out to be a very large boutique firm called Francis P. Maglio and Company. Frank Maglio, and there is a reason why I'm going to bring him up, is because Frank Maglio was a very interesting individual. He was a very hard boss to work for. He was a stickler for details, and he was driven like no man I've ever met. He was a state trooper in New York and decided one day, he came home and he said he hated this job and he wanted to do something different. And one of his good friends worked on the American Stock Exchange and got him a job there. He ended up going, and this is, we're talking many, many years ago, he ended up leading and becoming the CEO of Prescott Ball, which was a small firm back in, it used to be located in Cleveland, but their New York operation. Frank became the CEO of it. He moved that to the New York Stock Exchange, worked there for a year, and decided that he wanted to do it on his own. He had seen the revenues that the firm was generating, and he felt that he had an idea he could do this as well as they could, and he could generate more of the profits for himself. So he ended up starting his own small firm, and I got hired about a year and a half after he started, and it was a great experience. He was a very, very hard guy to work for. He wanted us to get every kind of license that was available. He wanted us to better ourselves every day. And this is a guy who didn't even go to college. And he wanted the absolute best out of his people. And he made sure that he kept two things in mind. You either succeeded and made a lot of money, or you failed and got fired. There was no in between with Frank Maglio. So thankfully I succeeded. And, I mean, you could see I have a personality. So it wasn't so much about intelligence, because I'm not the smartest guy there, but I definitely had a good personality and had a very good relationship with our customers, and that was why I succeeded. So, moving forward, about 9 years ago, Frank was walking on the street with his wife in Greenwich Village, and he saw a woman that he knew. She was sitting at a table, and she was the CFO of the Bank of New York. And she invited him over for a drink. And by the time they got done drinking, he had sold the firm. And which was a real shock, because no one knew that the firm was for sale to begin with. And, I was a senior partner in the firm, and he called me up and he said, well, we sold the firm. And I said, what firm? And I didn't know what he was talking about. And he wasn't a drinker. So I kind of thought that maybe, he had 2 drinks and that was it. So Monday morning, we had a meeting. We went and we met the chairman of the Bank of New York. He was very persuasive, and they ended up giving us probably 3 times as much as what the firm was worth. And when I walked out of the meeting, I said, we have to do it because this guy's an idiot. and sold the firm. They signed contracts that the day after they signed them, they called us up and said they regretted signing them. And I said, well, it's too late. You signed a 3-year deal and you owe us the money. So, I mean, that's kind of mean, but that's the way business works. You sign a deal, you have a handshake, you agree to a deal. They did not like it. They ended up destroying the firm, and they ended up taking a $28 million write-down because it was a mistake. But I knew the minute they signed the deal it was a mistake, because what they had done is they destroyed the business that we had developed. And it was also probably, there was peaks and valleys in every business, and we were at the peak, and they bought us at the peak, which was my boss's, these guy's a genius. So he sold it at the peak, and he ended up buying a couple of houses out in the Hamptons, and now he's changed sides, and he's now gay. So anyway, all right, that's not important. Anyway, so now, after that happened, we sold the firm, ended up, after 3 years, my contract was up. I decided I want to do something on my own. So we eventually ended up getting Empire Executions. Now, why is this important? It's totally not important. I'm just wasting time. But in the interim, while I was with Maglio, we had an opportunity, or I had an opportunity to start doing TV. And I did TV for FNN, which was CNN's financial news network. It was a major failure. But that's another failure I worked for. So Lehman, Bear, and FNN. Oh, all right. Anyway, so I worked for FNN for 3 years, and CNBC liked what they saw, I guess, and they approached me about doing a show, once or twice a week, and it ended up being, there were sometimes I'd do it 5 times a week, and it's been a great experience. And then 3 years ago or 4 years ago, Fox Business News, which if you've ever watched it, it's not very good, but they came down and they started, they opened up what's known as a booth on the trading floor, with personnel, and they broadcast from the trading floor, and they wanted me to go over there. Well, I have no idea why these people want me, but anyway, they asked me to go over there, and when CNBC found out, they offered me a contract. And they wanted an exclusive contract, and I was going to be exclusive to CNBC anyway, but now they're paying me, so another story that really doesn't have any point, but I ended up getting a contract with CNBC, and I've been on there for the last 4 years, and it's been a great experience. I don't have any groupies though, so, which is a little disappointing because a lot of the guys over there do have groupies, but I don't have any. So, all right. So anyway, that's pretty much my background. Good or bad, I mean, it's actually been part of the point of the story is that one of the things I want to definitely go over is your MBA students, your graduate students, and you have some idea. Most of you have some idea what you want to do or where you want to go, what direction you want to go in. I can tell you that whatever that direction is, 5 years from now you won't be there. Because most people that graduate, it's more of an undergraduate thing, but a lot of graduate students have the same situation. They will graduate thinking they can go into they want to go work for an accounting firm or they want to go work for a consulting firm, and they end up working for something totally different. You have to have your mind open to any opportunity going forward. This is an economy that you need to be able to understand that there are opportunities everywhere. You just have to be able to look at the opportunity and say, do I fit in whatever dynamic that these people are presenting? And you also have to be able to sell yourself to fit inside that dynamic. It's very important that going forward, everyone believes that there's not just one direction to go in. There's a lot of directions. And I give Frank Maglo as an example. He was a police officer, decided he wanted to do something different, ended up selling his firm for $48 million. So you know what, he did the right thing. I went and I have a degree in forestry, I ended up on Wall Street. You just don't know what your future is going to hold, and you have to be able to look, at every option and every availability. And this is an economy right now that, even though we're looking at it and saying that, there's 8.1% unemployment, graduates, the unemployment rate for graduates of university is a little higher because it's, you're just starting out in, life. But there are opportunities. And the thing is, one of these events like this are perfect for you because this is where you meet people in industry where you can network with them, you can get their cards, you can stay in touch with them, and you can develop relationships. And I think this is, when Liz mentioned this, I thought this is a perfect opportunity for, for any of the MBA students to come talk to me. I have a lot of connections, and I think that you use any connection you can. And one of the things, this isn't my presentation, but I was thinking about it this morning, is that if you have friends, and I don't like to advertise anybody's, social network, but LinkedIn would be a perfect example. If you are in my LinkedIn network, and you see I have 735 connections, and you see somebody in that connection group that could fit into what you'd like to talk to them, I can contact them and I can get them in touch with you. And that to me is one way of expanding your network. Now there's probably 50 people that have LinkedIn connections that you can look on their list of LinkedIn connections and see if you can fit yourself in there somewhere. And I think that that's something, that's one way of doing it. These events are another way. Anytime you can meet anybody that can help you, even in the gas station, you should try to, accelerate that friendship and try to get something out of it. It's an environment where we need, graduate students need to be able to be very aggressive. And that's a shame because, when I graduated, you didn't have to be aggressive. There were jobs everywhere. The unemployment rate was 3.5%. It's a different environment now. And I think that, any connection, if you have family connections, you should use them. There's nothing shameful about using a family connection to get a job. Both of my kids have jobs. Actually, my younger daughter got an internship at CNBC. She didn't want to do it. She wanted to do it on her own. I said, are you kidding me? I have more connections than anybody you'll know. You should use my connections. I can get you advertising. I can get you in publishing. I can get you in television. I can get anywhere she wants. I can get her an internship at the exchange. She didn't want to use it. She tried using her connections at school. She got 0. She calls me up on Tuesday. She has an internship on Wednesday. So that's, it's my daughter, and of course I'm going to go out of my way for her. But if you have family members that have connections, use them. And you know what, getting a job, you have to sell yourself the minute you get in the door. If they get you and they open the door and they allow you in that door because of a family member or somebody you meet on the street or a guy you dated, you use those connections because you have to sell yourself anyway. I mean, it's a bottom line is that it's going to be you in the interview, going at it and trying to sell yourself. So you know what, open the door, have it opened any way you can, and then use the connection afterwards, to help you further your career. All right, now I want to do something. Now I'm ripping up the script because this is a very important point, that life doesn't follow a script. You may think that whatever your specialty is, could be accounting, could be statistics, could be anything, you think that might be where you're going to end up. Like I said, there are a million people in this world, and there are some very famous people, Ray Kroc being a perfect example. He was a mixer salesman, ended up meeting the McDonald brothers in California and ended up saying he had a really good idea and ended up having developed the McDonald's food chain. And Harlan Sanders is another one who, Colonel Sanders owned a gas station. And he made fried chicken, and people loved his fried chicken. The next thing you know, the guy has 3,700 franchise shops around the United States. So where you start it's just a starting point. It's a way to, develop relationships, build experience, but that doesn't mean that's where you're going to end up. And I think that you really have to be able to look past the first job, because most people, after they land that first job, they learn everything they can about it, and especially with graduate students or MBAs, you're in a management program. You're going to be on the fast track to be in management. That doesn't mean you have to stay there, because as time develops and businesses develop, you may not like where you are, but you use that job and you use that job for a placement to another job. Now, I know that a lot of people don't like to hear that because that sounds disloyal, but the reality of the environment today is that, people work in jobs 2 or 3 years average, and then they move on to the next job. So I think that you have to be able to keep your eyes open. Every connection you make is an important connection. Even though you don't think it is, it's going to be an important connection. All right. Now, I ripped up the script because, like I said, your life does not run a script. All right. One of the important things, and this is something that I want to reiterate, is that even though the media has made a huge, all you hear about is the economy being, we're in a recession, the growth rate is 1.7%, which is not the GDP, that's not very good. But I think one of the things that comes out of something like this, out of a deep recession that we've just gone through, is most, not all, but most deep recessions, after the recession, within 5 years, there's been an incredible amount of innovation and an incredible amount of creativity coming from that. And I think this is where you guys are in a perfect position for that, because there's going to be a lot of companies developing products. They're going to be developing small companies. Now, we're not talking about General Electric. We're talking about guys that got fired from General Electric and they start their own companies. These are small companies where there's a lot of opportunity for people like you to be able to go in there and help these people build a brand, build a business, and usually after a recession, a deep recession, there's a lot of them. And the reason this is starting a little later, by now there should have been a lot more of innovation. One of the reasons that we haven't seen as much just yet is because banks have been it's been very hard for banks to lend to new businesses. So what ends up happening is now these guys aren't getting financing. These are people that were fired away from Hewlett-Packard and they're starting a business, they have a great idea, but they can't get the money to do it. The old school was you go to a bank, you get a small business loan, and you build out your business from there. Well, they're not doing it now, but the good thing is, and this is a very good thing, is that there's a lot of venture capital investing money in these small businesses. And this is where you guys can really fit in, because these companies, they may have a great idea, and they may be, very good with technology, and they might have a whole marketing team and everything, but you as MBAs will be able to fit into those companies to help them manage those companies. And I think this is a great opportunity. This is a great time to be graduating from an MBA program. I really do. I'm very optimistic about the economy anyway, because I've seen a lot of improvement over the last 6 months. But I think as far as innovation and small businesses, this is a unique time, and I don't think that, you guys should miss it. I think you guys should definitely explore those small businesses and see where it goes. I think that's taking a risk, but that's something this generation, my generation did not, and the generation before me definitely did not, but this generation is different in that they're willing to take risks. And a lot of I've talked to my daughter and all her friends and my other daughter, and I've talked to a lot of young people, and they're all about, they can take risks. They do believe that they're not afraid of risk. I was afraid of risk. I was, at a forestry, I needed a job, and my parents were going to throw me out on the street, and, I had to get a job, so I got a job on Wall Street. But now it's different. You guys have the ability to go out and explore something risky, and do something that's, it's substantial. And I think that that's a very important time. You're in a very, very good time going forward, because I think that these new businesses, these new business models are really going to be very, very, it's going to be a big growth industry. I mean, not big growth industry, but I think as far as MBAs go, I think this is an opportunity of a lifetime, having these businesses build out right now. All right, now I bored you with that. Excuse me one second. All right, one of the things that I wanted to go over, a very important thing is, this is more practical. The internet has changed the world, and it changed the way the world thinks, the way we operate, the way we do business. But one thing the internet hasn't done, it hasn't replaced the handshake. And I think this is very, very important. I know this is so simplistic, and I know this is going to bore you, but this is extremely important. If you meet someone, you shake their hand, you look them in the eye, and you ask them how they're doing. If you connect with somebody from the very beginning, no matter what you do in your career, that connection will always be there. People, they laugh at this thing. They think that it's well, everyone knows that. If everyone knew that, I wouldn't be bringing it up, because I've met a lot of college kids that can't look you in the eye, can't carry a conversation. They can sit there and program, until their face is blue, or they can sit there and they can tweet everybody under the sun, or they can text 47 people at once. But the thing is, they can't carry a conversation. They can't have a 5-sentence conversation with anyone. And that's where I think, and this is one thing that Liz had mentioned, that you guys, more than most people, can engage with people. And I think that that's an amazing thing. That is going to sell you. Your resume can be loaded up with everything. You've volunteered here, you've volunteered there. But if you can't speak to somebody, to me, I mean, this is very, very old school, but there's a lot of people here who will probably agree with me. If you can't speak and have a conversation with somebody, you're really not going to be helpful to my business. Because my business is about people, it's about meeting people, it's about talking to them, understanding their needs and wants, and being able to translate their needs and wants into action. You may be able to write, a thesis that's 500 pages long and could be published by 17 publishers, but if you can't speak to somebody, you're not going to succeed. You have to be able to engage. And I think that that's one of the things that this class, from what I understand, you guys do that. So, I mean, I'm wasting time with this, but I can't tell you enough how important it is to ask somebody how they're doing and actually mean it and actually want to listen to what they have to say. I'm going to give you a couple of pointers, and I've interviewed a lot of people, and I've been interviewed a few times. One of the things that strikes me about interviews is that most people have stock questions. They sit there with their parents, they have a question, where's my growth prospects? It's a bunch of BS. You know what? Everyone has the same questions. If you can sit there and look at somebody and talk to them about their business and get out of them something that they didn't give to anybody else, you're going to get hired. Because if somebody cares enough to know enough about my business and wants to know more about my business, I want them working for me. I want them working for me, and I also want them to understand that if you're asking those questions, I know you're going to give me 100%, and I'm going to give you everything back. And that's an important thing also, is that you're asking questions because, you have choices too. It's not only, they may have 50 people they're interviewing, but they don't know who you're interviewing with either. So there has to be a little bit of, I really like this company, but let me think about it. I'm not saying that you have to be egotistical or arrogant about it, but there are ways of being in an interview where you make yourself feel like, or you make them feel like, I really should hire her because she's engaging, she's intelligent, and she's inquisitive and she's asking the right questions, and you know that this girl is going to be a valued employee going forward. It's a hard thing to do. It's something you ought to practice. One of the things I like to tell my daughters is get as many interviews as you can and use, different methods in those interviews. Unfortunately, my older daughter, every time she interviewed, she got a job, but, that's because she's me. She's charming. But I'm saying that you have to be able to have that go back and forth. It's not only you on the hot seat, your interviewer should be on the hot seat. Your interviewer should be saying, well, you know what, that's a good question. I'll have to think about that. If an interviewer says that to you, you know you've hit a note. Because if they can't answer the question right there, they're going to love that. They want to have questions that they can't answer right away, and they want to come back to you and say, look, I've thought about what you said, and this is the answer. It's very hard for somebody to admit that they don't have all the answers, especially when you're on this side of the table. And that, to me, anytime somebody asks me a question I can't answer, I love that, because I think that's a person who's actually thinking. He's thinking 3 steps, 4 steps. I love that. So, the interview process and getting a job, like I said, you have to be able to connect with your interviewer. You have to be able to connect with the people you work with. It's great being able to know how to use computers and, all the technology that we have. But the bottom line is, we still have 338 million people in this country, and every one of them wants to talk to somebody else. And I think that if we forget that, then we become something out of like a Kurt Vonnegut novel, and I just don't want to see that ever happening. All right. What's the matter? 5 minutes. All right, I have 5 minutes. Couldn't believe I could talk that long. All right, well, actually, I was going to have a nice conclusion and everything, but you know what? What I'd like to do is I'd like to give people an opportunity to ask me questions. And I will answer any question. If I can't answer it, I'll lie. So just hit me with anything. And if you want to know the final score of tomorrow's Texas Ole Miss game, I can give you that too. So, any questions? That's it? Okay. No. Nobody has any questions?
Actually, I just have a few questions. Can you speak a little about what you think the future of regulation is for your industry?
All right. Well, there's 2 sides of the coin on regulation in the financial services industry. If you look at it from the individual standpoint, everyone wants to have protection from, nefarious characters like a Bernie Madoff or something like that. And if you look at it from the financial side or the business side, my side, I'd like less regulation. I think that regulation overall, now this is probably a good state to talk about in Mississippi, but I find regulation to be a hindrance to business activity. It also is very, very costly. I do understand the reason for a lot of it, but I think that the FINRA, which is the Financial Regulation Association, that's a private or nonprofit that's run by all the different marketplaces, does a pretty good job of regulating this exchanges and regulating brokerage houses and financial firms. It doesn't have a full coverage that like the SEC would have, but they have a pretty good staff that helps watch for there's certain targets they look for and certain red flags that they look for, and they're pretty good at watching it. And I don't think that they're not an overbearing organization. They do try to let businesses do their business, but there are rules that need to be followed. And I'd like less rules. I'd like less regulation. I think that, like I said, in almost any industry, I think there's too much regulation. I understand the reason for it, but I think that if there are people that are doing something wrong, they end up getting found out anyway. And then, if you're working for Morgan Stanley and you're a thief, it's up to Morgan Stanley to find it, because it's a bad mark on Morgan Stanley. If this guy ends up, costing the firm $50 million, it's not like it's a small thing and and it's in Chicago. Everybody in the United States knows about it within 2 hours. So I think that it's up to the companies to regulate themselves. I think that they normally do a very good job. I know that my company, we watch what we do, and we're a very small company, but I know that when I worked for Bear Stearns, if I sneezed, I had to have 3 people get the approval to say, God bless you. So, I'm not totally against regulation, but I do think that there's a limit, and I think a lot of it it's hindered, business development. No other questions? Yes?
Dovetailing on that question, is that hurting maybe this class of regulation and job growth?
Well, you know what? If you want to look at it, the other side of the coin is that there's an opportunity for you to go into regulation. The only, I'm being serious. The FINRA is actually, if you look at New York City, I mean, that's obviously where I live, the biggest increase in employment in New York City is not in, internet startups. It's in regulation in FINRA. They started in 635 in their staff. They have 1,900 people, and that was last year. So they're hiring. So actually, that is an opportunity. The only thing, it's the most boring job you'll ever do in your life, and you'd want to hang yourself from the 15th floor of the building that they're in. But it's an opportunity. I mean, I would never work for them. I'd rather go on unemployment. Yes.
What's your position on too big to fail?
Well, you know what? That's a great question. What I find is that I don't think any company is too big to fail. And this might go counter to my, my regulation, my Republican background, but I think that if a company mismanages itself, screw them. They really should. I don't think the government should bail out anybody anymore. I thought that it was needed when it happened. I thought that even though I didn't like it, I thought it was needed, and I'm not a big fan of the whole thing, but I did think at the time it was very important that it was done. I don't think now. I think if you can't fix your house, get your house in order, that's too bad. You know what? Your shareholders are going to get out and they'll get hurt. But you know what? To me, it's about the employees, it's about customers, and then it's shareholders. I mean, I work in that industry. I should be shareholders first, but it's about the employees of a company, it's about their customers, and it's about, shareholders third. And that's probably, I'm in the minority. But I think that, you know what, if a company can't do it right, it's too bad. I guess that's freewheeling, right? Yes?
What are your thoughts on presidential candidates and their impacts on the economy?
Oh, I knew that was going to come up. All right. Well, let me preface this before you even, I'm a Republican, but I'm not a diehard conservative Republican. I don't bleed, that whole thing. I don't. I mean, I voted for Jimmy Carter. Well, maybe because I was just high. I don't know. But I voted for Jimmy Carter. I liked Bill Clinton a lot, and believe me, he was a very good Democratic president. So I'm not totally against the Democratic philosophy. Typically Republicans are more business. They're much more, business-centric as opposed to social issues. But I think that, Mitt Romney, I'm not a huge fan of Mitt Romney, and I don't think the Bain Capital, his management of Bain Capital, I mean, as far as a lot of people in the United States, they look at that as a negative. I don't look at that as a negative. The guy ran a $17 billion company, and you know what? He went into companies that were overstaffed, underperforming, undermanaged, and went in and cut staff, brought in better management, and brought in better practices and made them profitable. I don't understand what's wrong with that. That's capitalism. That's what this country was founded on. So I think that if Romney, the only problem with Romney is I don't know where he stands on anything. So it's kind of hard to say what his philosophy is. But if you look at his past, I would be more inclined to, favor Mitt Romney, because I don't really find a lot of, the president's policies that productive for, the economy going forward. Maybe I'm wrong. And I was also taught, very, very important thing, the most important thing you're going to get from this, you don't argue politics, religion, or sex. And that's politics, and we're not going into religion, not in the Bible Belt. So, and the sex is my business. I hope that answered something. I'm good like that, or I can just go beat around every question and never answer it directly. Any other questions? Yes? Yes.
What do you see as far as the Wall Street, floor traders going to? Because everything except for construction and manual labor is now internet-based. Do you see the traders going away or being here for a long term?
Well, I could tell you that, I've made my career down there, and it's very hard for me to say this, but what I do can definitely be done electronically. I wholeheartedly think it can be. I don't think it's effective. I don't think it's the only thing that it benefits is it's cost effective. That's it. Having someone on the other end of the phone and having someone that you can talk to and you can discuss a philosophy or how you want to execute an order. We're just talking from floor side. I think a lot of clients still want that. I think even though they know that they can do this, whatever this type of trading is, they can do it without anyone touching it. The bad part of that is no one's touching it. And there's no one to sit there and say, well, you know what, that's horrible. That's a bad execution. Why is that stock trading down $3 when if I had the order, it wouldn't trade down 50 cents? You know what I mean? So you want somebody to be able to answer your questions. And I think that even though they can do without it, they're having a lot of the people that make the decisions, even though it's probably more expensive to use the floor or use any broker, they don't want to lose that connection to someone to answer their questions, because really you have to answer to somebody, and if you don't have an answer, you can't make it up, you know. And so it's having somebody involved and having people touch things. I think it's still important. You know, they're the other side that say, well, you know what, I pay you, 40 mils and I can get this done for 20 mils, meaning, they can get it done for half the price. I said, well, if you really look at your cost of execution and the pricing of the execution, you'll see there's a major difference. And there is, and there's been a lot of studies done that having a broker execute the order has been more effective price-wise, not so much cost-wise, but price-wise. But you know what, the problem is a lot of people don't care anymore. And I think that that's a major issue, is that there are very large funds that don't really care about price. They want speed. And you know what, and what I've said, and I give this in a perfect example, and I had a friend of mine, he was a very nice guy. He worked for New York State Teachers Pension Plan. He was their trader. And they have 40 some odd billion dollars in equities, and plus they have $80 billion in bonds. And so he traded a very large portfolio. And he said, I don't need you guys on the trading floor anymore. He said this 5 years ago. I don't need you guys on the trading floor anymore. All I have to do is I get my list from my portfolio manager, I press a button and it gets executed. I said, oh, that's great. Now, how much do you make a year? And he said, well, it's not your business, but I think he made about $300,000 a year. So I told him, I said, well, you can get a guy from Baruch College or Pace or, any school in Manhattan, and that guy can come in and press the same button for $55,000 a year. And you want to give up your linkages and your connections to the people across Wall Street. You have a tremendous amount of order flow, you have a tremendous amount of relationships, but you want to press a button and kill all those relationships. And he said, yeah, why would I want to make 15 phone calls on 15 orders when I can press that button? For the very reason that the reason you're there is because you have that ability to make those 15 phone calls. He lost his job 3 months later. So, you know what, people clamor for technology. They don't understand that the end result of technology is less people. So, I mean, there has to be a point where you have to have there's a fine line between getting rid of them and using them and still having people. Did that answer it? Or I can go on for like 2-3 hours. That's a great question. I could do that one forever. Pardon me?
Personal interaction at the end of the day.
I believe that, and that's why that was one of the points of my speech, was that you still need to have that personal interaction. Especially in Mississippi, everyone loves to talk. You know what I mean? So, and New York, everyone loves to talk. I don't understand why everybody would want to do away with that. Yes, handsome fella.
So we just went through a major financial real estate bubble. A lot of people got hurt. However, I feel like a lot of people make a lot of money.
Absolutely.
And so what I want to ask you is, what do you think, or what do you foresee in the next bubble? Because there is opportunity in bubbles and there is opportunity in recessions. You mentioned a lot of great companies start out with recessions, and there's a lot of opportunities. MBA kids take risks. So what are your thoughts on the next bubble?
Well, I'm not going to give you a timing of it because you don't really know. You know what I had thought when Facebook had come out? Now, everyone talks about Facebook, which I think is the biggest waste of time. But everyone was talking about Facebook and where they were going to price it. And I'm thinking if they were pricing this stock where they originally thought it was going to go, I thought there was going to be another bubble with that. And I think the markets have corrected the social media bubble, because if you look at all the social media stocks, the only one that even remotely is doing well is LinkedIn. The rest of them are not doing well at all. So as far as a bubble and timing a bubble, I don't really know. I think what you want to do to see, I think what you need to see is at least a 3% or 3.5% growth in the GDP. Once you start seeing that, which you probably won't see until 2014, you see that, then the market's going to be ripe for movement on the downside. And I think what we're seeing now, the market actually is maybe 600 points off its all-time high. I think it will touch that high at some point, and it will go higher after that. But we're getting to a point where if you're investing, you're getting to a point where you're getting close to that. I just don't know exactly when it is. I mean, timing is, anybody who times anything, they tell you they timed it, they're a liar. It's luck. But, any other questions?
We're out of time.
We are?
I encourage you to talk to Peter throughout the day. Please do at lunch, grab him and ask him more questions.
I don't have any business cards, or I'd give them to you. I don't.
Thank you so much.
No, you're welcome. Thank you.